Thank you, everybody. Chris is really nervous, so anything you can do to make her more embarrassed and humiliated would be great.
This happened on the show all the time.
Well, thanks everybody for coming, and I promised that I would do this, so I'm going to start with this one thing. Robert Weisbrot wrote a book that never is found anywhere on the final seasons of Hercules. And I know this is a Xenacon, but it's actually a really great book with final interviews with Kevin Smith and myself and Alex and Bob and Bruce Campbell. And if you ever can find it, it's actually a great insight into kind of the deterioration and end of a show. So, anyways, thanks everybody. Thanks somebody who came and fixed my internet service provider yesterday.
Who do we know who's so computer savvy? So we're going to use the same system we've been using all day. I've got some questions. If you've got some questions, you can come out to the mics, and I'm going to open up. We're going to get them started while people are doing that. Okay, Rob, can you give us an update on the movie status?
You know, what I'd really like to say is that somebody wants to do a movie. Somebody keeps telling me they want to do a movie. Lucy and Renee go, if it happens, we'll believe it when it happens. We keep thinking we're in a negotiation, but they never counter. But they keep saying they want to do it. So it wouldn't surprise me if it happened, but it also wouldn't surprise me if it didn't. I certainly know that in 10 years they'll do a movie, kind of the Charlie's Angels version, but I know, boo, boo, but yeah. But in the meantime, I actually think sometime in the coming couple of months we'll know one way or the other. There's kind of a story and kind of a budget and kind of a game plan, and just not a willing partner who has business affairs that'll return a phone call. So. Anyways, hopefully we'll have better news or one way or the other. So I can't say that I can't say that it won't happen. Let me put it that way. I can't say that it won't happen.
What was that?
No, when the time is right. When the time is right, and I know that the right person is to be attacked. Then I'll make that public knowledge. But. Actually, a guy, an executive, he called me 6 months ago and said, I really like it. It's a great idea to do a movie, and let's do this. And we've come to that point where now it's either let's get serious or let's not. So let's hope he gets serious.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to start off here. Xena could have been just a Warlord of the Week type of show. Instead, you chose to highlight the growth and relationship of these two women. How come?
Did we? They just kept changing the script that we wrote. You know, the first year of Xena, because I had a conversation last night as I was being refreshed, we were scrambling so much, and what we kept thinking the first season of Xena, because I can't even talk about the second season until we kind of got through the first, which was Xena was Clint Eastwood, and...
With tits.
With tits. Oh, yeah. And Gabrielle was the mouthpiece, and it just became kind of one speaking on behalf of the other, and that developed into a relationship. And so, in some way, even though there were a lot of great episodes and a lot of great things happened to Gabrielle the first season, it was only once we did Callisto that I felt that the show kind of knew what it was, which was people from the past popping up to morally challenge Xena. And then we did Return of Callisto in the second season, and then Lucy got hurt, and we covered what happened. But so it was Warlord of the Week, and probably it was really differentiating ourselves from Hercules. that led us to more serialize the character development.
Although it's changing now, men have dominated the writing field in Hollywood. Rob, you brought in 2 male staff writers and 1 woman writer to write a show about 2 women. Why not more female writers? Did I say that right? Okay.
I'm going to let Chris answer this actually because it was, you know, the truth was is we brought in a woman who didn't work out at first because she really wanted to write a show, a different show, and then although she's not here because she bailed on Chris and I, Liz Friedman was really integral to the show, and although she's never given a writer credit, she was part of the show, and so she was an influence. And as far as the other comments, I'm going to leave them for you.
Thanks, Rob. Gee, I didn't feel that gender was really an issue among the writing staff, at least, on this show. The characters are strong characters, and I tend to feel if you can write male and female characters. Certainly it didn't hurt that Xena was as strong a woman as she was, and to have her referred to as Clint Eastwood with tits also helped. But quite honestly, I didn't feel alone in the room, and again, that's a lot of credit to Liz, but all of the writing staff. I mean, I just didn't perceive that as a problem. Other people have asked me, gee, wasn't it strange? It was not strange. We were all making the same show. We all had the same vision, hopefully, and I didn't miss it. There was one writer I really would have liked to have seen more of, and she's no longer with us, unfortunately. She passed away. But that was Hilary Bader, and she wrote just fabulous episodes. I would have loved to have worked with her more, but other than that, it really wasn't an issue.
This show, Rob, this show was conceived as an action-adventure show, yet you're always commenting on the heart of the show. Why was that so important to you?
TV is, well, all entertainment is meant to move the audience in one way or the other. And one of the things that I liked originally about Hercules is when we did episodes that brought a little tear to people's eyes. And Xena was a great opportunity to do that. So we really concentrated when we could on finding the heartline of the story, where the characters had been moved, and as we did our little work on the board, we always tried to find what was the heart between the 2 characters.
Yeah, and I think it only adds layers and texture to a show that could have been pretty superficial if all we had concentrated on was the action. God knows the action was hard enough, but to layer in heart and emotion, I think it makes it a stronger show. I think it makes any show stronger than that, but stronger than just one level. But oftentimes, if you follow the heart, you know the episode anyway. It leads you into the conflict, and it's just so much more interesting. I think people tune in week after week, not just to see great action stuff, which we certainly did, but to see the growth of the characters, their conflict, their resolutions. I think that's what makes an outstanding series, and that goes on for season after season. I think otherwise it gets boring and flat. That's my opinion.
Chris, you wrote for quite some time on Murder, She Wrote, and you were writing for a middle-aged, sedentary Angela Lansbury.
Don't tell her that.
She's got an exercise video. You come to Xena, and you're into the world of action. Was this a difficult transition?
It was a big transition. On Murder, She Wrote, we were always being very circumspect about the way this character would interrogate people. She never lost her cool, and she was always very gracious. Xena was not, and it took me a while to kind of get that, the fact that this woman spoke her mind. And once I got it, it was so liberating. I can't tell you. It was such a joy to write a woman who just spoke her mind and let the cards fall where they may.
You've frequently said that you bonded, first started writing for the Gabrielle character, and you found her very familiar and comfortable. And you just talked about learning to get the Xena character. Did you find pieces of yourself in the character to tap into?
I'd have to say yes, but I had to do some excavation for that. Hey, I'm from the South. We were raised to be genteel. So again, it was so liberating. Gabrielle was, at least in the first season for me, a piece of cake because she was such a chatty Cathy. And
Yeah,
she
like
really...
in Altered States where she got really stoned.
Now see, there's where experience pays off, you know? As a writer, you write what you know. I'm teasing! Thank you, Rob.
Do we have a child of the 60s here? I think we have a gentleman with a question over there.
I was wondering why Sam Raimi never directed an episode or anything.
Sam's never directed an episode of television. He's used to 120 days. And then reshoots.
I'm going to ask one here. We'll take a little pause over here, just so you can face the other side of the audience. You decided in season three to shake up the relationship. This had the potential to alienate the audience. People become very comfortable with the status quo. Were there discussions about whether or not this was a good move among the writing staff?
Chris, you go first.
I think people can become too comfortable with the show if they feel like it's not growing, and certainly conflict is well, I don't know how there's any growth without conflict. So it's a no-brainer that if you're dealing with your lead characters, it's an interesting thing to do to put them in conflict, and more interesting to try and resolve it.
And yes, Chris really handled that well. It was a monumentous moment because I can reflect back as those decisions you make in life where RJ said, we should do a Halloween ep that's Rosemary's Baby. And so we kind of backed into that, and they kind of all, now I'm working on something, a movie, and they said, yeah, and the lead character's gonna have a demon baby, and her sister's gonna know it's a demon. And I went, man, I did that. That's a really bad idea, guys.
We're going to have one over here.
Xena and Gabrielle in one of the episodes, they were going to tell us whether they were lovers, and they were finally going to do that. And then there was technical difficulties. Right. So I was wondering, that could you straighten that out for us and let us know whether...
I don't know. I think you had to ask Lucy and Renee.
That's the perfect dodge.
Let's take another one over there.
Hi guys, I wanted to thank you too for 6 years of solid entertainment. But I was wondering if you guys felt that there were maybe 1 or 2 episodes that, even though they had a good concept and were going well in the planning stages, something went wrong and they just didn't come out the way you felt like they should.
Fished it.
Except for Married with Fish.
I second that. Boy, do I second that.
No, I'm going to take the total rep for that because that was an episode that I still kind of like in its own special way, but it was meant to be like a live-action Simpsons, and it just was never meant to be a Xena episode. So, Chris, well, Steve's right down there. What episodes did the directors screw up? Because for the most part, I think...
Okay, we'll lay it off on the directors.
Well, when you send a script down and it comes back and it's so different, you go, well, it was a better idea than that. Really, there were very few scripts. Vanishing Act was one that never, that was a bit. Pardon? Ulysses, yeah, there's one. So there were ones that sometimes you make a casting mistake. That did happen, and sometimes...
A little something called Paradise Found, I think. God, the director on that.
The 4th act went tard, yeah.
What about The Haunting of Amphipolis? What do you folks think of that?
Pardon?
The Haunting of Amphipolis? What do you think of that episode?
You know, an odd thing happened with that. It got paired up with the wrong director. We switched, and we couldn't switch directors. So the guy who ended up directing it was more of a relationship thing. And yes, as a horror meister, certainly with a long past of doing horror, it just missed the mark, and in television there was no way to go back and strengthen the horror elements. But we did toss Renee back in that stinky underwater pond to get some extra footage, so tried to fix that one little part up.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We're gonna take one over here. Rob has often talked about his love of the young, evil Xena, who you created in Destiny. Rob, did we like that? Got some fans there. Rob, why do you like her? Chris, how do you feel about her? And for both of you, is there any place that you would have considered too dark to take her?
I'm going to answer half that, and then I'm going to let Chris answer the other half. It was a way of young Xena, or evil Xena. We went there too much, and we needed to rein back some of that. But one of the things that it allowed us to get storytelling in just out different stories that we wanted to get to, and have Renee's or Gabrielle's reaction to finding out those stories. So that was the part that evil young Xena serviced, was how do you do a story with all this past and have Gabrielle learning something about the person she's been traveling with. And so that was what it served. Sometimes we probably did a couple too many eps, but I always liked, oh well. I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, I agree. I think it's a visually interesting way to tell a backstory rather than have talking heads. Well, when I was evil, I did this and that. You actually got to see her do it, you know? It brought it home. It also made her quest for redemption a lot more real, because now you all have shared in the evil she did, and you understand why it would be impossible for her to get redemption, except I guess in the 6th season. I never wasn't there. Now I'm in real trouble. I haven't answered enough. I've got to go now.
I'll just let the pause go. Did you get to the part where, is there any place too dark that you step back and say, no, we can't have her do that? She beheaded people, stuck them on pikes, she walled up a child.
No, that's legitimate, but Chris, you answer that. I do have a comment, but.
Okay. No, I think I flinched at a few of the evil Xena doings. But again, it made her really bad. Otherwise, I think people would have gotten at a certain point saying, well, come on, she was evil, but how much does she have to repay before she gets redeemed? I really do feel like keeping that part of her alive helped make the show stronger, so that people aren't going, oh, right, already, get redeemed, you know? That's what I think.
I don't know. There were choices, certainly, that directors made, probably myself included, that I wish we had pulled back in just the portrayals or changed some things. But as a whole, no. I'm happy with, when we went there, I was happy with the stories we did. Even though they never rated well, I always really liked the 6th season. the Norse episodes. Those. And I'll say, hindsight's 20/20. I always wish that we tried to work. It was, but Chris would have been a great beneficiary in the 6th season. So, a great addition.
Thank you, Rob.
Let's go to the gentleman over there on the microphone.
At the risk of being booed, I want to say I thought A Friend in Need was a masterpiece.
What was?
I thought A Friend in Need was a masterpiece.
Oh.
Although you,
The finale.
although what I want to say, you excised my favorite shot from the director's cut. I love that in shot of Gabrielle on the boat alone, happy that she was still with her, and you cut it out of the director's cut. Okay, I knew I could boo. All right, but my question to you though is, you had this great Garden of Gethsemane scene with Callisto and Eli, and then Ares kills him. Did you ever ponder taking it to the crucifixion like Eli was? I know you got in trouble with the way, but I wondered if that was ever contemplated.
You know what? That scene, the Garden of Gethsemane scene, is one of my favorite all-time scenes we ever did, and it's horrible to say because none of the stars were in it, really, none of the leads. But we went all around on that episode about what the heck to do, and Eli and I had, we changed the name to protect the guilty and with Eli and all that. So right up to shooting, we had a different name, Issa. Yes, anyways, we played around with that. I can't recall all the details, but as we tried to tread through history very carefully. And yes, we did get our hand properly slapped with the way.
Let's take another question from over there. Over there.
Hi. My question has to do actually with the musicals. You've been doing all this rough stuff and warrior stuff and all of that, and then boom, there's this beautiful musical. Why did you decide to do that? Where did that idea come from?
From Rob.
Even though I'm a married straight man, I love musicals. So when we got to The Bittersweet, which Steve and Chris had the pleasure of winding through that process with us, we felt that music was the best way to heal that wound, and that it allowed the emotions to be displayed without necessarily having to verbalize them in dialogue. So it seemed like the right answer to that solution. And then just before we walked on stage, Chris and I were talking about Liar, Liar, going, man, we sure like that. And then just in terms of musicals, there was a musical that didn't get shot, probably the right thing, because it would have impacted horribly on how much money I would have had to do the finale and how much energy the stars would have had. But that darn musical has continued to reincarnate in various forms. So one day, I hope to make a theatrical movie, musical. It can't be Xena because Universal wants nothing to do with musicals. So, but anyways.
One short follow-up. You did 2 musicals, but the second one, it was all Broadway tunes, but you changed the words. Did that have anything to do with Lucy being pregnant and being hard on her, or?
You know, one of the reasons, we did that was because I thought after seeing the first musical we did and then seeing the Buffy musical he did, that it was so hard to understand what the people were saying in those musicals that you kind of lost the point until you got the actual words in front of them to understand what they were saying. And we just wanted to kind of do a feel-good thing. And I don't know, do you remember, Chris?
I honestly don't remember the thinking behind using pre-existing music. Obviously, changing the lyrics made sense, but I honestly don't remember why. Do you, Steve? Why we used pre-existing music?
He wasn't.
No, forget it. What do you know? No, seriously.
Chris's song was "People Have" the finale. That was your recommendation. People have got to be free.
No, I don't know about that. I did the Bye Bye Birdie one.
We're going to take a question over here.
Xena Scrolls was a great episode. Was there any thought to having Janice Covington and Mel Pappas come back?
Janice and Mel.
That was the 1940s episode. That was the 1940s episode?
Yeah. Chris was just saying, I don't think we ever mentioned them again. I think
Not in the writers' room.
Not in the writer's room. I think that they went off with Ted. What can I say? You're a swell dame or whatever it was. So.
Let's talk a bit about Aries. Aries was sometimes seen as a stalker to parts of the audience because of his behavior with Xena. Yet, Kevin Smith's portrayal made him incredibly attractive. Your take on the Aries-Xena relationship?
Come on. Like nobody here has ever been involved with someone who was terrible for them, but you just couldn't get out of your system. Come on. I think we tried to team Xena up with various men, Ulysses, Rafe, people that she just blew off the screen. So I know for me, when it came to thinking of pairing her with a man, and we had tried all these other ways, the only way I could think of was Aries. I mean, the two of them worked so well together. They had such chemistry. Why not go for the gold? That's the way I looked at it anyway.
I can't say any more.
Chris, how much freedom, we're watching your guys' interaction up here, how much freedom did Rob give the writers to speak their mind if they disagreed with the direction an episode was taking or the characters of the show?
Do you see this finger I've lost? I have to tell you, everybody in the room had a voice. From the assistants on up. That's what amazed me when I first started working at Xena. I wasn't on staff, I was a freelancer. I walked in that room, there must have been 8 people there. And as a freelancer, you have to kind of figure out where the pecking order is. You couldn't. Everybody had an equal say. That's not to say that in the end, we didn't do it Rob's way, but, but everybody did have an equal voice. I've never been in a writing room where that's happened. It was a blessing, it really was. Thank you, Rob.
You know, you don't want to punish people for putting out bad ideas. You just want to sort through and pick out the good ones. So really, what's been a blessing for me is as time's gone on and the shows are, I've gotten calls from people who worked there and said, you know, that was great and the room worked so well and it made so much sense how that worked or it didn't work. And but the people who work for us have all called back and said, geez, that was great, and geez, that was a smart way of doing things, and or that worked for us, and we sure wish they'd run this like that. But that was them.
And it starts at the top. I mean, I think you do deserve credit for that, Rob.
I'm going to take the person over there.
What was the most serious disagreement you two ever had about the show?
I think it was the time you knocked me flat when no, I'm teasing. I do remember Rob told me he threw a script of mine across the room once when he was reading the one of the Livia things. I had gone too far in decadent Rome. I think it sickened you and you threw it across the room. I believe that's correct. Am I right?
Chris would remember if I said that.
Boy, would I.
You know, the only thing that, geez,
I didn't like killing animals. I was known as the animal lover. That's
right. Chris gave me the most trouble for letting Lucy run around with those silly teeth in Paradise Found.
I think we can blame that on Lucy. No.
She's not here.
I did not watch that many Hercules episodes, but one of the ones that I did watch was Yes, Virginia, There Is a Hercules, where they spoofed all the writers. My question is was any of your sessions kind of like that? And you particularly, Rob, how did you feel about Bruce's portrayal of your character? And how everybody was, you know, Liz and then was trying to off you?
You know, I started with this Robert Weisbrot book because it's covered in there. Everybody couldn't believe that I kept pushing to do that. Alex and Bob, who wrote it, and it was really their comic genius and Bruce's talents that brought it to life. And Liz just kept gleeing and rubbing her hands and going, I can't believe we're doing this, I can't believe we're doing this. So it's one of those ones that it could have failed as miserably as fish sticks in its own way, but I do enjoy that episode. It was a totally different take on covering that Kevin Sorbo was missing. So, that's one of those ones that is a special little gem.
In hindsight, do you wish you could have hidden Lucy's pregnancy?
As a writer, it certainly presented its challenges, not the least of which was explaining it, but you know what? In hindsight, it also added yet another layer to Xena's developing character. How was she going to deal with this, especially when she turned out to be Livia, all of that. And I don't think it's a bad thing, because it leads you to new stories and greater depth of character. It was hard. I'm not saying it wasn't hard, but I think it was worth it.
There was no way to cover it. There's no way to cover it. So people had said, oh, you could just shoot from there was no way to cover it. So you could have gone down. It was probably 10. Anyways, you could have just written her out and killed her. Gabrielle runs around 8 weeks trying to find a way, or 8 episodes trying to find a way to where's Xena missing. So, so there was no way to do that, and there were stories born out of that and things that we were forced to do, like go 25 years in the future, which opened up a whole avenue in a funny, silly way that I thought was a bad idea at first, but it opened up all new avenues, and there was a moment at the end. The last time we saw Eve in the series was not a particularly great episode, but a huge fight at the end of it, Path of Vengeance or something. And there's a moment at the end where Xena and Gabrielle watch Eve walk off, and it's a really sad moment of a mom kind of watching her daughter leave for the last time. So I like that it, like Chris said, opened up moments that you would have never gotten to otherwise.
I'd heard there were plans during season 5. George Strait has talked about a storyline to set up Xena's daughter as a major villain in Xena's life and spend that season with Xena as the Robin Hood of Rome. Do you remember why you didn't use that storyline, and do you remember that storyline at all?
Chris remembers it.
Not a moment of it. No, actually, I think once we did the 25 years Frozen, and now, which I have to tell you, it had my vote all the way along. Dealing with the little baby for more than an episode or two is like, you know. But, and also you imperil the child, and then everybody's eyes are on, is the kid gonna get it, you know? But, and I would have been the first to say, yeah.
Yeah, Chris got stuck with the first baby episode with Eternal Bonds.
Oh, God, yes. And I think I ended up killing almost everybody's child somewhere along the line. I killed Hope, I killed Solon, you know, my thing, killing children.
Okay, we had Rafe in King Khan, Ulysses in Ulysses, Mark Antony and Antony and Cleopatra. Every once in a while, you had Xena falling for a man. Why?
Because she could. Well, Rafe and Ulysses, I don't know. They have bad judgment. I personally like Mark Antony. I like that Cleopatra episode.
It was storytelling. It was storytelling. And then as time went on, it was how does Gabrielle react? How does it impact the relationships? And there's a scene in that Cleopatra with Mark Antony when we got that song from Natalie Merchant, and who I think didn't know we were going to use it like that, but that's another story. And Gabrielle's over there, and she's just wiggling and so unhappy with that, and I always remember that moment. So it once again, it allowed you to get to different storytelling and character beats so that things were fresh and new and different.
I mean, it opened up the world half again, you know? And also, relationships are relationships. I'm sorry, but we're all human. And yeah, some of us have one gender or another, but come on. When you have trouble in a relationship, it's not all that different. And Rob's right, it allowed us to explore Xena and Gabrielle's relationship in a different way. So I think it widened the series' scope and spoke to a lot of people, not a narrow segment of people, but everybody. And I think that's what the show is about ultimately, being human.
Rob, when you were writing the finale, was there talk, were you having in discussions for Xena telemovies with the studio?
When we were, yes, as the series was ending, they had approached us about doing 4 telemovies, and I kind of thought that we were, and I certainly, I don't know, there was a bunch of talk at that time, and talk is cheap, as I now know, but yes.
So at the time, when you wrote the finale, you did not think that was the end of Xena, correct? That would be the end of Xena.
No.
So
no,
the question.
We thought it was really setting up a want-to-see situation for going into telemovies or a movie, but it wasn't really the way that the Xenaverse was going to end forever. That said, we had gotten ourselves into a terrible predicament of Xena feeling, or Xena being redeemed. So it was a rush.
If you had known, if there's no movie, if you had known that that would be the last time Xena would be on the screen, would you still have had her die?
I don't, yeah, probably. You know what, I don't know. In fact, we wanted to go to Japan, we wanted to tell a story, we had talked about Japan forever, and I wanted to do the Japan one because I like, Xena kind of came from Hong Kong action movies, and it certainly was my final tribute to that era of those movies, and so I don't know. I squirmed. I actually squirmed as we were working on the story forever and a day, and RJ kept my nose to the grindstone on that. No, Rob, no. So, and I don't know, for a character that was about redemption, it seemed like the right thing to redeem her at the end, somehow. So I don't know. You know, and people keep talking about the end of Xena. There's all these Xenas running around. There's Xena and Gabrielle clones in modern day. Somewhere took off in a cab drinking champagne. Where they are, there's Mel and Jan's kids. There's Xena trapped modern day in the Deja Vu one where they're out there somewhere.
We're out of time for our questions, and I just wondered if there's anything you guys had to say to the audience out there for 10 years of
Thank you
support.
very much. What a discerning crowd you are.
And I know that the people who are here now, truly love the show, but more importantly, I know that they love the community that the show created and look after the community and the people within it. And that's really what's so great to me. So thank you for being wonderful people.
Thank you, Rob Tapert and Chris Manheim.